She was still sleeping in the same bed, still answering his texts, still showing up to Sunday dinners with his family, laughing at the right moments, squeezing his hand when his mom told old stories. Marcus had absolutely no idea, not a single clue. And then one Tuesday morning, everything collapsed. And when he looked back, the signs had been there for almost 4 months. This channel, Brutal Relationship, exists for one reason: to hand you the uncomfortable truths that most people are too polite to say out loud, because knowing is always better than being blindsided. Now, before we go any further, this isn't about vilifying women or turning you into a suspicious, paranoid partner. That's not the goal here. The goal is awareness, because the psychology behind what happens right before someone checks out emotionally and physically is genuinely fascinating, and once you understand the pattern, you can't unsee it. Sometimes catching it early means you actually save the relationship. Sometimes it means you save yourself. Either way, you're better off knowing. So, let's get into it. The first thing, and this one will make complete sense once I explain the psychology behind it, is emotional distance that arrives disguised as independence. Here's how it usually plays out. Things between you two have felt a little flat lately, but nothing alarming. She starts mentioning she needs more space or more time for herself. She picks up a new hobby, starts going to the gym at odd hours, volunteers for extra shifts at work. And on the surface, that all sounds completely healthy. Reasonable even. But watch the texture of it. There's a specific quality to this kind of withdrawal that's different from normal personal growth. When someone is genuinely building themselves up, they usually want to share that energy with the person they love. They come home excited. They talk about what they're learning. They want you involved at some level. What you're looking for instead is a withdrawal that has a wall behind it. She's not just going inward. She's going somewhere you're specifically not invited. Psychologically, what's happening is something researchers call emotional detachment as a pre-infidelity coping mechanism. The mind starts creating separation before the body does. It's almost like the brain needs to file the paperwork before it takes action. She's rehearsing emotional independence, testing what it feels like to need you less. Think about this. When someone is about to leave a job, they stop caring about the office politics. They stop investing in relationships with coworkers. They mentally clock out weeks before their last day. The same mechanism runs in relationships. So, what do? Don't chase the distance with pressure or accusations. Instead, get genuinely curious. Ask open questions, not interrogations. You seem like you're somewhere else lately. What's actually going on with you? Said warmly, not as a trap. You're trying to reopen a door that's quietly closing. Whether she walks back through it tells you everything. The second thing is a sudden, unexplained upgrade in her personal presentation. But it's not for you. You'd think this one would be obvious, but it almost never registers in real time because the brain instinctively explains it away. She starts wearing perfume on random Wednesdays. She buys lingerie you've never seen. She's doing her hair differently, spending longer getting ready before ordinary errands. And whenever you notice and compliment her, the response feels slightly off, a little distant, a little deflective. Here's what most people miss about this. When people dress up for their partners, there's a certain warmth in how they receive the attention. They lean into it. They want you to notice. When someone is dressing up for a different kind of attention, they almost flinch when you notice, because your noticing is a complication, not a reward. The psychology here ties into something called the attraction investment shift. When emotional energy redirects toward a new person, so does the physical self-presentation effort. She's not doing this consciously most of the time. The nervous excitement of a new emotional connection naturally spills into how she carries herself, what she wears, how she smells. It's almost involuntary. Let that sink in. She might not even fully recognize she's doing it. So, what do? This one requires you to pay attention to the pattern, not just the single instance. One new outfit means nothing. A consistent shift in presentation that coincides with other changes on this list. That's the signal. If you're noticing it, calmly and without accusation, create space for an honest conversation about where the two of you actually stand. Because the real issue isn't the perfume. The real issue is the emotional gap that opened up somewhere upstream. The third thing is, she stops bringing you her problems. This sounds small. It isn't. In healthy relationships, emotional intimacy runs through conflict and vulnerability. Couples argue, they stress together, they lean on each other when life gets heavy. When a woman is emotionally invested in a relationship, her instinct is to process her problems with her partner. It's how connection deepens. So when she stops doing that, when she suddenly gets very self-contained, starts solving things on her own without looping you in, brushes off your questions with, "I'm fine, I handled it." That's not growth, that's relocation. She's moved her emotional processing elsewhere. And here's where it gets genuinely interesting from a psychological standpoint. Studies on emotional infidelity consistently show that the emotional bond formed with a potential affair partner almost always precedes any physical crossing of lines. The physical part is often the last thing to happen, but the intimacy, the feeling of being truly seen and understood by someone new, that's what hooks people first. She's not just talking to someone else about her problems, she's building a foundation. Think about what it felt like early in your relationship when she would tell you everything. Her fears, her frustrations, the weird petty things that annoyed her at work. That access was intimacy. When that pipeline quietly reroutes, you feel it even if you can't name it. There's a hollowness to the conversations, a politeness that wasn't there before. So, what do? Re-earn the role of the person she wants to process with. Not by demanding it back, but by creating the conditions where it feels safe and worthwhile. That means listening without immediately fixing, without getting defensive, without making her feelings about you. If she's tested that and found it wanting, she's gone looking elsewhere. Knowing that is painful, but it also tells you exactly where the repair work needs to happen, if repair is even what you want. The fourth thing is, phone behavior changes completely. This is the one most people have heard about, but they still misread it. It's not just that she's protective of her phone, it's the specific way it happens. The screen flip when you walk into the room, the sudden switch to silent when it's always been on, the slight physical shift, phone angled away, arm position changed when you sit close to her. It's almost choreographed, and it happens without her realizing how obvious the choreography is. But here's the layer most people miss entirely. It's not just what she's hiding, it's what she's stopped sharing. Because before this, she probably showed you things on her phone freely. Memes, videos, screenshots of conversations. There was an openness. Now the device has become a private world with its own door, and she's the only one with the key. From a psychological standpoint, the phone becomes what therapists sometimes call an emotional sanctuary, a place where the version of herself that exists in this new connection gets to live. It's separate from the relationship, separate from the identity she shares with you. And that separation feels both exciting and guilt-inducing, which is exactly why the secrecy becomes almost reflexive. So, what do? Going through her phone behind her back will almost certainly backfire. Even if you find something, the way you found it becomes the focus, and she gains the moral high ground. Instead, name what you're observing directly. I've noticed you seem a lot more private with your phone lately. I'm not accusing you of anything. I just want us to be honest with each other about where we're at. How she responds to that tells you more than anything you'd find by snooping. The fifth thing is, she starts rewriting the history of your relationship. This one is psychologically sophisticated and deeply unsettling once you recognize it. She starts bringing up old arguments more frequently, not to resolve them, but almost to revisit them with fresh resentment. Moments you thought were long buried suddenly resurface. Remember when you did that thing 2 years ago? And somehow, everything in the past starts being framed through a lens of disappointment. Here's the thing. This isn't random. The human mind has a remarkable ability to retroactively reframe the past to justify present behavior. If she's moving towards something, or someone, that she knows would devastate you, her psyche needs a narrative that makes her the wronged party. It needs a story where leaving or betraying makes a certain kind of sense. Researchers call this cognitive dissonance reduction. The guilt of what she's considering doing, or already doing, creates a psychological tension that's almost unbearable. So the mind goes back and edits the story, amplifies the bad parts, minimizes the good ones. Suddenly your relationship wasn't as good as you both thought. And somehow that's been true all along. It's not fully conscious, but it's very real. You'll feel it as a kind of constant low-grade defensiveness. Like you're always slightly on trial for something, but you can never quite identify the charge. So what do? Don't play defense. The moment you start itemizing your good partner credentials, you've already lost the frame. Instead, bring it back to the present. It sounds like a lot of things have been bothering you that we haven't really talked through. I'd rather deal with what's actually happening now than keep relitigating old stuff. What do you actually need from this relationship right now? That question cuts straight through the historical revision and demands a present tense answer. The sixth thing is her friends suddenly know less, or know something you don't. Pay attention to how her close friends behave around you. If something is happening, they almost always know before you do, and their behavior shifts in subtle but readable ways. They become slightly more formal with you. Conversations get shorter. There's a wariness when you ask general questions about how everyone's doing. Some of them can't quite hold eye contact the way they used to. And on the other end of it, she starts spending significantly more time with certain friends, new friends you haven't met, or a specific friend she mentions just often enough that it doesn't seem suspicious, but frequently enough that the name starts to form a pattern. This connects to something real in how social networks function during relationship transitions. People don't emotionally exit relationships alone. They build a supporting cast first. Friends who validate the feelings, who provide cover, who make the new path feel less isolated. By the time you notice the social shift, the groundwork has often been laid for a while. Let that sink in for a second. Her social world reorganizes before her romantic world does. So, what do? Don't interrogate her friends. That ends badly in every direction. But do. Pay attention to your own relationship with her social circle. If you've let those connections atrophy, that's worth addressing. Couples who maintain genuine friendships with each other's people have stronger relational accountability. It's not about surveillance. It's about being genuinely woven into each other's lives in a way that makes stepping out psychologically harder. The seventh thing, and this is the one that catches almost everyone off guard, is a sudden surge of guilt-driven affection. Right before or during the early stages of emotional or physical infidelity, many women go through a phase of what looks like renewed warmth. She's more physically affectionate. She does thoughtful things out of nowhere. She's kinder, more patient, almost like the early days. And naturally, you think something shifted. You think things are getting better. You relax. But there's something uncomfortable underneath this that psychology explains very clearly. When someone is carrying guilt, real heavy guilt, they often overcompensate with the person they're wronging. It's an unconscious attempt to balance the internal ledger. If I'm extra loving here, maybe it offsets what I'm doing over there. It doesn't work, obviously. But the brain tries anyway. The thing that distinguishes genuine reconnection from guilt affection is sustainability. Real renewed closeness builds. It gets more comfortable, more communicative, more honest over time. Guilt affection has a slightly frantic quality to it, and then it evaporates. The warmth has no root system, so it doesn't last. You'll feel the difference if you're paying attention. So, what do? Receive the affection, but stay grounded. If the warmth is real, it will deepen when you move toward honest conversation. If it's guilt-driven, it will get uncomfortable when you try to go deeper. A simple, sincere, "Things have felt different between us lately. I want to make sure we're actually okay, not just performing." Okay is one of the most powerful things you can say, because a person acting out of guilt is terrified of that question, and a person genuinely trying to reconnect will welcome it. Here's the bigger picture underneath all 7 of these signs. None of them, not one, means a relationship is automatically over. Some of them are signs of a relationship in serious distress that hasn't fully broken yet. And distress, when caught, can sometimes be turned around. Not always, but sometimes. What they all point to is an emotional disconnection that happened somewhere. And that disconnection didn't appear overnight. It built slowly, quietly, while both people were busy living their lives and assuming the foundation was still solid. The painful truth is that relationships don't fall apart because of one dramatic moment. They hollow out from the inside, small unspoken thing by small unspoken thing, until one person starts looking for somewhere new to put what they stopped finding at home. That's not an excuse. Cheating is a choice. But choices always have a psychological upstream. And understanding that upstream is what separates people who keep falling into the same relational patterns from people who actually break the cycle. If you watch this and recognize 3 or 4 of these signs in your current relationship, don't panic, but don't ignore it either. Have the real conversation, the one you've both been circling around. Because the scariest version of this story isn't the one where you have a hard conversation. It's the one where you don't. And 6 months from now, you're Marcus, lying awake, replaying 4 months of signs you talked yourself out of seeing. You deserve to know. Now you do.